Welcome back. Let's look at some economic news. Our economy continued to show signs of stagnation in December, according to the composite leading business cycle indicator. The South African Reserve Bank released that December leading indicator, which shows a 2.1% decrease. Now, the BCI, as it's called, provides early signals of the direction in which the economy is moving in real time. So it looks now at what could happen in future. The decrease was broad-based across all 9 available component time series. The largest negative contributors were a decrease in the number of residential building plans approved, as well as a deceleration in the 6-month smooth growth rate of job advertisement space. At the same time, the composite coincident business cycle indicator increased by 0.2% in November due to an increase in retail and new vehicle sales and industrial production. So some silver linings. Now, despite a scramble to keep the lights on, South Africa's power supply infrastructure seems to be getting worse. The country has been plunged into stage 6 rolling blackouts again, and there's massive concern that retailers and other businesses will pass on their costs to consumers, and that small businesses simply cannot survive in these conditions. Let's speak to a real estate service provider now, Broll Property Group. We're joined by the MD of Broll's Energy, Water and Sustainability Division, that's Mitesh Bawan. Mr. Bawan, thank you for being with us. Broll does so much, it's one of the big players, but to simplify, just so our viewers know, could I say that if there was a big shopping centre, they say you would often be managing that property on behalf of the owner?
That's correct, thank you.
All right, so now you're looking at the increased costs. I mean, can you give us a sense of what you're seeing over time, the costs of, I don't know, installing generators, maybe even trying to put in solar solutions?
Yeah, so thank you for having us on the show. We are seeing a big increase in diesel consumption. The fact is that the are real. The other additional cost that's not being considered is the service and the maintenance of these diesel generators that are not essentially there to be run at 12 to 15 hours a day.
So this is huge. I mean, can you quantify in terms of a percentage increase in the cost, say, for owners? And then we'll talk about what is passed on to the tenants that are struggling as well.
Yeah, so we're seeing between a 50 and 80% increase in their costs based on.
What a pity. We lost you there. Let's try again. Mr. Bawan, can you hear me? All right, we will see if we can get him back, because that sounded simply alarming, a 50 to 80% increase in costs. I'd like to ask him, what sort of costs are we talking about, the overall costs or simply in terms of energy? Mr. Bawan, we have you back, I understand. We lost you after you said these companies are facing a 50 to 80% increase in costs. Can you explain that? It sounds incredible.
Yeah, so the costs are purely based on the diesel pricing. So the diesel generators essentially generate energy, but if you're looking at the cost of the electricity grid parity versus the cost of diesel, it is, that percentage between 50 and 80% more,
so this
depending on the size.
This is energy costs, say, for a big retail center?
Yes.
How much of those costs are being passed on then to the tenants? So, during COVID-19, tenants were crying out, saying that the rent is high. Contractually, how much is being passed on? We've heard of doctors, for instance, working in a complex, and then they are required to pay more because a generator is being used.
Yeah, so it depends on how the leases are structured, but a lot of the costs are being transferred to the tenants. A lot of landlords are trying to assist where possible to try and shield the tenants from these costs, but ultimately the energy and the energy is being used by the tenants, and they are ultimately required to pay these costs.
Yeah. Are landlords being sympathetic where they can be, if they are big and they can?
Yeah, the bigger the landlords, I think the better they are. They've got to try and shield the tenancy and the vacancy rates currently in the retail environment. So I think it's a mix between the landlord and the tenant coming together to see what can be done to reduce these costs.
Yeah.
And in some instances, they're looking at the alternative energy solutions, the battery backups, the inverters, etc. But these all come also at a capital cost.
And of course, some of these tenants are big retailers, the so-called anchor tenants. So they'll have a big store, but the concern is that they're passing on those costs to consumers.
So most of the anchor tenants essentially have their own backup solutions. So they are managing that on their own, but it's obviously at additional costs, and ultimately the end user will be paying because the cost of goods essentially rise.
Is that why you can walk into a shopping center and sometimes the big retailer, the big food store, the lights will be on, but the other smaller stores, they simply can't afford to do that. So they have to close shop.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the conundrum we sit in now, where we've got to come together to work out what the practical solutions are to keep everybody open, because that's you're essentially going to convenience stores and to shopping centers, not only for the big retail outlets, but also for the odds and ends that you're looking for.
And everybody benefits from the foot traffic, right? If it's a center.
Correct.
Are you able to gauge how much small businesses are suffering? I mean, we know that some people are really reliant on energy, hairdressers, for example, the beauty salons. Are you seeing them fall off, not being able to pay? Are you able to gauge how serious it is for those sorts of tenants?
Yeah, I think tenants, for example, that are more energy intensive, they are going to struggle more because they're more reliant on this diesel generator and the diesel costs. Entities that have got refrigeration systems in them that are ultimately higher. They, in terms of even...
All right, let's try one more time. Mr. Bawan, can you hear me?
Load shedding at the moment.
All right, unfortunately, we lost you there, and I only have time for one more final question, so let me throw it at you. What is being done? Your COO has spoken about saving costs. I remember when you started walking into parking lots and the lights would turn on and off with motion detectors. And is there anything exciting in terms of potentially a feed-in tariff and tax breaks and putting solar panels on roofs and getting money back from government for that? All right, we've lost our interesting guest. We'll see if we can chat to Brol again another time, but I think we did get some insight there, especially into how small players are really feeling this pinch. That was Brol, MD of the Energy, Water and Sustainability Division, Mitesh Bawan.